Hello, hello. Aeriol Asher here. Thanks for dropping in to Healing Body, Mind, and Soul. I'm so excited today because my guest is none other than my dear friend, teacher, colleague, Julie Hawkins. She's the biz psychic, and she's also a powerful author of How to Say No. I don't know if I have the title right, but Julie's going to talk to us in just a moment here. But we're going to have a really important conversation today about boundaries. Julie's book just frames it so great for women to be able to set boundaries powerfully on so many levels. So I know you're going to want to lean in today and just be a fly on the wall to this great conversation with Julie Hawkins. Welcome, Julie.
Hi, Aeriol. I am so excited to be here, and I really, really appreciate the opportunity to just touch on this topic. It is really an important topic for women especially, and men too, but especially for women.
Yeah, and why is that? Why women in particular need this topic around boundaries and around saying no?
Well, there's several reasons for that, but the most obvious ones are our culture and society. And even though we make breakthroughs all the time in how we get rid of those norms, those cultural restrictions, they still hang with us. And it's also environmental and familial. We're brought up in certain ways. And even if it's never expressed, it's sort of implied that we just want to go along and not rock the boat. And so women especially sort of, I call it a kind of a glitch in the genetic code that we're working to correct. So yeah, there's a variety of reasons that we need to tackle this topic.
Interesting. Okay. So a glitch in the genetic code.
We're always improving.
Julie, yes, I know. Well, we are ascending at this time. I believe that our consciousness is finally waking up, and I think it is about freaking time.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. It's a time when women's voices need to be heard more than ever. Women need to be stepping into leadership more than ever. Everything, right? But why is it a glitch in our genetic code?
Well, I think it's just passed down that way. It's from back in the cave people time. Men were just the stronger of the species, and it had to be that way. And we are reprogramming our genetics as well as our consciousness. And every generation gets it a little bit better. So evolution is a happening. The one thing I want to touch on really, really crucially to begin with, though, is that I want to tell everybody, especially women, that they have permission. They have permission to think about what their response is, to do what's best for them. And if that means saying no, then that's what it means. Because when you say yes automatically to someone else, you are saying no to something in your life that you may not really want to be saying no to.
Yeah, I get that. It's great to set boundaries, right? I mean, that's what we're really talking about.
Exactly.
My background, Julie, is in improv comedy, and you don't say no. That is why we train not to do it. We want to keep the energy going and keep it flowing, and how we can build and say yes and instead of stopping energy, right? Diverting flow. which is kind of an Aikido thing, right? Diverted a different way. So it's not even just about the language, right? It is about how to set an energetic boundary, a physical boundary, an emotional boundary, all of these things.
It's all of those. And I think that a lot of women don't realize that boundaries exist in every aspect of your life. They're not just physical, they're not just emotional, they're everywhere. And the response that we normally make is to sometimes agree because we don't want a confrontation.
Right. We just want to, we don't want to rock the boat, right?
Exactly.
But or we don't want to hurt anybody else's feelings.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. How often do you think the people on the other side of that equation consider our feelings, right? Yeah, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. As women, I think that is a really strong one.
Well, I think that's a whole cosmological issue as well. We women mostly who have discovered that this is a challenge in this lifetime, we actually attract people in to help us learn how to set boundaries. And we do that in ways that challenge us. So those people that seemingly have no problem saying no, well, they're here to teach us. They really are. So it's a mirror, it's a projection oftentimes, and it's a way for us to learn from them. And I often see that as a gift, although it doesn't always feel that way at the time that it's happening. So there's a lot that goes into saying no and setting boundaries. We don't just leap from feeling like we don't want to rock the boat or avoid confrontation, or I feel guilty if I set my boundary, to no, that doesn't happen overnight, and that doesn't happen immediately. If it did, you wouldn't have this issue.
Well, first you have to have the awareness, and then you have to have the willpower to make it happen, and then you have to verbalize a boundary somewhere. I mean, there's a couple steps that need to happen in there, and there's a couple different things going on.
So it's a great point that you bring up, Aeriol, because in my book, Say No Without Guilt, I set forth a system. And we need a system because we can't go from point A to point Z overnight. And so I call it the Taylor system. Taylor is an acronym. It's TAILOR, and it stands for those steps to help us learn how to create awareness. And I go into detail in there. I probably don't have enough time to do that now. But it is awareness. It is language. It is a whole spectrum of things that we need to become aware of before we can set boundaries in a confident, courageous, and compassionate way.
Yes, of course. So what are some tips? Actually, something you said just sparked something, Julie. Sure. So I love the part of your book, not just about saying no, but how to not have guilt, like how to heal the emotional body of that well-worn thing that we just start producing guilt for ourselves. 'Cause that's an internalized emotion. It doesn't have any basis in reality, really. Can you talk about guilt a little bit?
I would love to, because that is sort of the main point I hear from women as to why they struggle with this issue of saying no and setting boundaries. And the guilt really comes from a place of, how do I take care of myself? How do I do that and not hurt somebody's feelings? And as I said, it's a progression of steps. And becoming aware of what triggers that feeling is a good way to identify what is it that is triggering that guilt for you? Is it not wanting to say no to somebody? Is it that you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings? And if it's any of those things, it's finding the right language to communicate where you're at, how you want to I'll say no, how you want to say no to somebody and feel good about it and not hurt their feelings and have the other person feel good about the response. And it sounds like a lot of work, and eventually it just becomes your new knee-jerk reflex. Instead of saying no, instead of saying yes, and when you want to say no, you learn how to think about what feels right for you, how to acknowledge the other person's request, and then come back with what works for you. And it may be that there's some negotiation around that. So there are steps involved. And when you do those steps, when you really work this program, the guilt just automatically disappears because you're honoring your values, and that's what's most important. So
I would love to, that is such good stuff, Julie. And what I want to do right now is take a little short break, and I'm going to bring us right back after a couple announcements from our sponsors. All right, we're back with Julie, and she's just about to share with us some of her fabulous super tips. If you have heard the first part of our conversation, you know that we're talking about women who may have trouble saying no, or feeling guilty, or problems keeping their boundaries. So Julie is going to tell us more.
Thanks, Aeriol. And I really want to say that a big part of where this can really be a struggle for women is in their business. Often when we're in business for ourselves, we don't want to say no to any clients. Been there, done that. It's not the best way to grow a business, or say no to the boss. And so that leads me into really what I call my 7 magic words. So instead of an automatic, or what I call a knee-jerk response of saying yes, when you really, really want to say something else, I came up with my 7 magic words. And how this really came about was that when my daughter was young, she would, as children do, ask me for all kinds of things. And often I would just say no, or I would say yes without really thinking about it. And if, of course, yes wasn't really always the problem, but if I would say no, that could often be a problem, and then it would lead to big issues and fights, as can happen. Until one day, she asked me for something. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner, and I looked up at her and I said, I'd like to think about that. And it was really a game changer. She looked at me and said, oh, okay. And I was like, Eureka, voila. It was really a game.
In her trap.
Oh my gosh. It was such a game changer because.
But wait. Let's all try that. So tell us what those 7 words are again.
Here are the 7 magic words, and they're really important that you never change them. They have an energetic connotation. They are, that is a word, comma, or pause. I'd like to think about that.
So everybody, as you're leaning in your car, on your walk, wherever you are, let's try it all together now.
I'd like to think about that. Exactly.
Very good.
And I really invite you to take your time and say those words as often as possible. One of the biggest mistakes I'll say that I hear is that women will change the words to say, let me think about that. You don't need permission. You don't need permission. It's, I'd like to think about that.
Yes, because then the power's on you, right? Instead of
Exactly.
granting someone else permission. Beautiful.
So we do an exercise, and I'll just give you the shortened version of that, which is anytime somebody asks you for something, it could be the most ridiculous thing ever. You come back with, I'd like to think about that. Because it gives you the opportunity to break the pattern of your automatic yes. And it really conveys that you want to consider their request in a thoughtful way. So I really invite everybody to practice that, and I say do it ad nauseum until people come back to you and say, excuse me, do you know how to say anything else? I'm really sick of hearing, I'd like to think about that.
Julie told me to say that.
But it really does break the pattern. And that's what you're working towards, is breaking the old pattern of saying yes when you really want to say no.
Right. Embrace it. So this is Julie's super tip. Please embrace it. Okay, Julie, well, what if our listeners need a little bit more help than just this one super tip? How can they get the whole Taylor system and the whole kit and caboodle? How can they reach out to you?
I'm so glad you asked, Aeriol. So I did, over years of doing this work, I created a workshop, and I have taught this over the years. And so I still continue to teach that. And for more information on Say No Without Guilt, you can go to my website, which is juliehawkins.com, just as it sounds, juliehawkins.com. And additionally, because so many people asked for this information, I wrote the book, Say No Without Guilt. And it outlines everything that we go over in a workshop and further. And of course, I think it's a great place to start. So that is called Say No Without Guilt, 6 achievable steps to confidently set and communicate boundaries.
Julie, that's wonderful. I'm sure that all of our listeners are going to go to the show notes and click the link to your book on your Amazon author page and pick up their copy today, because it is really a powerful, powerful book.
Thank you.
I want to thank you so much for coming on today, and I want to thank you listeners for tuning in. Please be on the lookout, because I have more special offers. There will be a healing body, mind, and soul book anthology coming soon. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for all of those fabulous things.
Can I leave one question out there for your listeners? No? Okay, quickly. I just want to ask them, in what aspect of your life, where are you saying yes, where you really would rather say no?
Thank you. And now we'll go ahead and do our outro again. I hope that all of our listeners have enjoyed this show. And until next time, happy healing.